Subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon so that you never miss any video lesson from Rao's IAS Study Circle. Join the official Telegram channel of Rao's IAS Study Circle to stay updated and get all the materials on the Telegram. The link to the channel can be found in the description box. Hello and welcome to Daily News Simplified, an answer to what, why and how of newspaper reading from our UPSC Civil Services examination perspective. Today let us discuss some of the important news appearing in the New Delhi edition of the Hindu newspaper dated 27 September 2021. The news to be discussed has been displayed on your screen and time stamping for the same has been provided in the description box below. So on this note, let's start our today's discussion from our prelims and mains point of view. The first news to be discussed appears on page number 1 and also on page number 8. It says Maoist influence down from 96 to 41 districts as per the Ministry of Home Affairs. Now this news highlights that the Home Minister chaired meeting of chief ministers and officials from 10 states to review left-wing extremism. So this topic of left-wing extremism becomes important. As you can see, questions have been asked in the past by UPSC in 2018 and also in 2020. And this topics forms part of GS paper 3, especially with respect to linkages between development and spread of extremism and role of external state and non-state actors in creating challenges to internal security. Now, according to the Government of India, specifically Ministry of Home Affairs, internal security issues in India can be broadly categorized into these four aspects. These are terrorism in the hinterland of the country, left-wing extremism in certain areas, insurgency in northeastern states, and cross-border terrorism in Jammu and Kashmir. So whenever you study about internal security and challenges, please focus these four aspects in mind, and questions in your UPSC mains examination can be asked regarding these four aspects. So with respect to left-wing extremism, there are three aspects which we must understand. Now the government aims to counter security challenges by improving infrastructure and also improving capacity building of center and state security forces. Now, apart from countering the security challenges posed as a threat by left-wing extremism, the government also ensures developmental activities so that the welfare activities reaches to the common people on the ground and also promote good governance. Now, the benefit for ensuring developmental activities and also promoting good governance is that the local people will not get involved with the left-wing terrorist, and through government welfare schemes they will understand that overall welfare is more important than joining the left-wing extremist groups. And accordingly, Government of India has taken various steps with respect to countering security challenges in areas affected by left-wing extremism and has also taken certain developmental activities in order to promote good governance in the region. So after understanding this aspect, let's take up this question asked in 2018. This question was, left-wing extremism is showing a downward trend but still affects many parts of the country. Briefly explain the Government of India's approach to counter the challenges posed by left-wing extremism. Now in this question, you need to address the steps taken by Government of India in order to challenge the threat posed by left-wing extremism. And in this regard, you could have addressed all these aspects with respect to countering security challenges, thereby enhancing the capacity of our central and state security agencies, and also steps taken by the government to promote developmental activities, thereby promoting good governance in the region. Now let's see this question asked in 2020. It says, what are the determinants of left-wing extremism in eastern part of India? What strategy should Government of India, civil administration and security forces adopt to counter the threat in the affected areas? Now if you have gone through today's news, it also talks about these three aspects, that is better coordination between central and state security and civil administrative agencies, building pressure on those Maoists, and also it talks about a review mechanism which should be done periodically, say after a period of 3 months, to know about the developmental activities and also to know about the security challenges posed in different districts which are affected by left-wing extremism. Now regarding left-wing extremism, according to Ministry of Home Affairs, there are 10 states which are severely affected by it, and these 10 states are Andhra Pradesh, Bihar, Chhattisgarh, Jharkhand, Madhya Pradesh, Maharashtra, Orissa, Telangana, Uttar Pradesh, West Bengal, and also some other states. And according to the Ministry of Home Affairs, these 10 states also form the famous Red Corridor through which these Maoists operates. And this Red Corridor stretches from Nepal through central India till Karnataka in the south. And as you can understand, this Red Corridor stretching from Nepal till Karnataka in the south poses a significant threat to India's national security. And this Red Corridor and the left-wing extremists are also at times funded by China and Pakistan. Now, the problem with left-wing extremism is that it is based on extreme left ideology, where it legitimizes the use of violence to counter existing socio-economic and political structure. And as per their ideology, left-wing extremism is to overthrow the government at various levels by the use of violence. And because of this, they are also against voting for Lok Sabha, Vidhan Sabha, or even for Panchayat elections. So basically, they are against the political and socio-economic structure developed by the Government of India and respective state governments. So in this news analysis, let us understand about the significant achievements with respect to decline in left-wing extremism and also certain developmental initiatives which have been taken by the Government of India in order to promote good governance and also to counter security challenges posed by these Maoists. Now, this news highlights that both incidents and death related to left-wing extremism is on a decline. Now, this is the data from the Ministry of Home Affairs. As you can see, in 2009, the number of left-wing extremism incidents were 2,258, which as of 31st August 2021 has boiled down to 349 only. And if you notice this particular graph, it is mostly on a declining trend since 2009. Now, similarly, a declining trend has also been witnessed with respect to deaths accounting for left-wing extremism. And as per 13th August 2021, there were only 110 deaths as compared to 183 deaths in 2020. Again, if you see, there has been a constant decline with respect to number of deaths caused due to left-wing extremism. Now, apart from this aspect of decline in left-wing extremism incidents, in yesterday's meeting, the Home Minister also highlighted about important facts, importantly with respect to reaching of these welfare programs to the common man. Home Minister highlights that welfare programs must reach to the common people in left-wing extremism affected districts. Now, this is important because it will ensure that common people do not join the left-wing extremism, and these welfare policies and programs provides an opportunity for the government to provide complete development and also decentralization of power at grassroots, especially with respect to panchayats. Further, the Home Minister also highlighted that focus should also be given on the aspects of health, education, and livelihood, along with implementing of Forest Right Acts in order to ensure rights of tribals and forest dwellers. Further, the Home Minister also highlighted the importance of review of developmental works at ground level, especially in the LWE affected districts. So the Home Minister highlighted that to tackle LWE in affected districts and review developmental process, the Chief Secretaries of the affected states should hold a review meeting with the DGPs and also officers of central agencies at least every 3 months along with their Chief Minister. So this review process will give the state governments an idea not only about the review of developmental work done at the ground level, but it will also give a clarity to the state governments with respect to the threats posed by left-wing extremism in these affected districts. Further, the Home Minister also reiterated the importance of neutralizing the financial resource or financial source for these left-wing extremists. The Home Minister highlighted that it's very important for these LWE affected states to neutralize the sources of income of left-wing extremists, and for this, states and central agencies should work together by building pressure, increasing speed, and ensuring better coordination. Now, this particular statement can also be asked in your mains examination as to how the government intends to build pressure, increase speed, and also better coordination in order to tackle the threats posed by left-wing extremists. So in this regard, the Home Minister highlighted the need to neutralize the source of income of these left-wing extremists, and also highlighted the importance of a review mechanism which should be done every 3 months. Now, with respect to declining left-wing extremism, the Home Minister also highlighted that various extremists in the northeast region of India have surrendered. And in the recent current affairs video of Indian Express Explained, we discussed about the Karbi-Anglong Pact. So the Home Minister highlights that about 16,000 cadres have joined the mainstream of the society, and this also includes Bodoland Pact, the Bru Pact, Karbi-Anglong Pact, and also surrender by the insurgent cadres of Tripura. Now lastly, the Home Minister also mentioned about a revised categorization of left-wing extremist districts. So here the government highlighted that in order to curb the expansion of CPI Maoist, which has been banned by the government, and also to restrict them to bounce back in certain areas, 8 districts have been categorized as districts of concern by the Ministry of Home Affairs. So these are some of the highlights with respect to the meeting conducted on left-wing extremism by the Ministry of Home Affairs, along with 10 states affected most by left-wing extremism. So after understanding about these important steps which have been highlighted in the recent meeting, let's also discuss about the important measures or steps taken by the Government of India in order to curb left-wing extremism in India. Now, apart from developmental initiatives, one of the most important steps taken by the central government was to create a LWE division under Ministry of Home Affairs. Now, this division was created in October 2006, and this division was created to effectively address the left-wing extremist insurgency in a holistic manner. So overall, this LWE wing ensures implementation of various security-related schemes aimed at capacity building in LWE affected states. The wing also monitors the LWE situation and also various countermeasures taken by affected states. Further, the wing also coordinates the implementation of various developmental schemes of central government with that of states affected with left-wing extremism. And these can be said to be the following important functions performed by the left-wing extremism division of Ministry of Home Affairs. So its functions include deployment of central armed police forces in LWE affected areas, reimbursing security related expenditure incurred by LWE affected states under the security related expenditure scheme, that is SRE scheme. And based on this particular scheme, a grievance has been raised by the Chief Minister of Jharkhand. Further, this wing provides assistance to state governments for construction and strengthening of fortified police stations. Further, this wing also provides funds to CAPFs for civic action program in LWE affected areas. Now, this civic action program, especially in LWE affected areas or districts, helps in bridging the gap between security forces and also common people. Thereby, it helps in building trust and confidence of common people with that of security forces. And building of this trust further helps the government in implementation of important welfare schemes in the LWE affected areas. Further, the wing also reviews the security situation in LWE affected states and accordingly issues advisories to the affected state government. Further, the wing also provides assistance to state governments towards capacity building to combat left-wing extremism in the states, and also it coordinates the implementation of LWE related schemes of central ministries for left-wing affected districts. So these can be said to be some of the important roles and functions performed by the left-wing extremism division of Ministry of Home Affairs. So based on this understanding of the function of left-wing extremism division of Ministry of Home Affairs, let's now go through some of the important developmental initiatives and schemes and national policies in order to address the security challenges posed in LWE affected districts and also the developmental initiatives. So one of the steps suggested is that of SAMADHAN, and SAMADHAN stands for Smart Leadership, Aggressive Strategy, Motivation and Training of the Police Forces, Actionable Intelligence to Prevent Any Casualty, Dashboard Based KPIs, that is Key Performance Indicators and Key Result Areas, Harnessing of Technology, Action Plan for each theatre and No Action to Financing. So this policy of SAMADHAN is in order to tackle left-wing extremism in the short term, medium term and also long term approach. So keeping in mind this aspect of Samadhan, the government had proposed National Policy and Action Plan in 2015. So this National Policy and Action Plan basically aims at security, development of the region, and also to protect rights and entitlements of citizens. So it says that it envisages a multi-pronged approach comprising security aspect, developmental initiative, and ensuring rights and entitlements of local communities. Now, important features of this plan are zero tolerance towards violence, along with big push to developmental activities. And the whole idea behind this is to ensure that benefits of development reaches the poor and vulnerable in the LWE affected districts. Now, it is because of resolute implementation of National Policy and Action Plan, we have witnessed a constant decline in LWE violence and also its geographical spread, as has been highlighted in this particular news. So with respect to decline in left-wing extremism in India, you must know about National Policy and Action Plan. So as a part of this plan, it ensures security of LWE affected areas. And in this regard, the Ministry of Home Affairs supports the state government for capacity building and strengthening of security apparatus by deploying centrally armed police force battalions, providing helicopters and UAVs to such LWE affected states. It also sanctions the presence of India Reserve battalions and Special India Reserve battalions to such LWE affected districts. Further, under this policy, funds are also provided under modernization of police force, security related infrastructure scheme, and special infrastructure scheme for modernization and training of state police. So again, with respect to LWE affected states, these three schemes becomes important, namely modernization of police force, security related expenditure scheme, and special infrastructure scheme. And all these collectively aims at modernization and training of state police force. Now it also talks about providing finance under the SCA scheme or Special Central Assistance Scheme. So it says that funds for development are also provided to most LWE affected districts under the Special Central Assistance Scheme. Now this Special Central Assistance Scheme is a sub-scheme of umbrella scheme, namely modernization of police forces, which we just saw. And the main objective of SCA scheme is to fill the critical gaps in public infrastructure and services. So, funds are also provided under the National Policy and Action Plan to address left-wing extremism in India. Now, the Ministry of Home Affairs provides funds under security-related expenditure to those districts who are affected by left-wing extremism. Now, of these SRE districts, that is such districts affected by left-wing extremism to which security-related expenditure is provided, those districts accounting for more than 85% of country-wide LWE violence has been further categorized as most affected districts. And as per yesterday's meeting of Ministry of Home Affairs, 8 districts has been further categorized as district of concern. So in these most affected districts and districts of concern, there will be special focus with respect to deployment of resources, both regarding security and also with respect to developmental activities, especially with respect to education, health, and also livelihood. So, talking about developmental activities, apart from the flagship infrastructure schemes of the central government, several developmental initiatives have been implemented with respect to construction of roads, installation of mobile towers, skill development, improving networks of banks and post offices, leading to financial inclusion of districts affected with left-wing extremism, and also implementation of health and education facilities. So, regarding imparting quality education to these left-wing extremist affected areas, the government has decided to establish Eklavya Model Residential School. And out of 234 Eklavya Model Residential Schools sanctioned, 119 schools have become functional. Further, according to Department of School Education and Literacy under Ministry of Education, it has also opened 7 new Kendriya Vidyalayas and 6 new Jawahar Navodaya Vidyalayas in the districts affected most by left-wing extremism. So, apart from infrastructural development with respect to road, mobile towers, skill development, and also steps taken with respect to financial inclusion, the government has also opened not only Eklavya Model Residential School but also Kendriya Vidyalayas and Jawahar Navodaya Vidyalayas in these left-wing affected districts. So these developmental activities will not only improve connectivity of the region, but it will also enhance security of the region and will also address the educational concerns of students living in those LWE affected districts. Now further, it also provides for civic action program, which we have just seen, GIS mapping, that is geographical information mapping, with respect to various security related and developmental related initiatives taken by the government in those LWE affected districts. So such a mapping will help the government to find out with respect to financial services, schools, post offices, health facilities, mobile towers, PDS services, road and security features which have been provided in these LWE affected districts. Now these information with respect to GIS mapping will help both the central government and also the state governments to take informed decision on not only developmental activities but also security related measures which needs to be implemented in such LWE affected districts. And in this regard, the LWE affected states have been asked to effectively implement the provisions of Panchayat's Extension to Scheduled Areas Act of 1996, along with implementation of Forest Rights Act. Now both these legislation will collectively strengthen grassroots democracy and it will also strengthen Gram Sabha. Further, it will also help to prevent exploitation of mineral-rich areas, especially by corporates. And implementation of Forest Rights Act of 2006 will further provide an opportunity to citizens living in LWE affected districts and regions to appeal against decision of Gram Sabha if they feel aggrieved to subdivisional level committee and also to district level committee. Thus, implementation of PESA Act and Forest Rights Act will collectively strengthen grassroots democracy and also ensure the rights of citizens living in those forest areas. Now, other important initiatives include initiatives relating to skill development and creation of infrastructure. So, the Government of India has been implementing two schemes, namely skill development in 47 LWE affected districts and Pradhan Mantri Kaushal Vikas Yojana. Both these schemes aims at creating infrastructure and also provides employment-linked skill training to youths in those LWE affected areas. So it not only helps in infrastructural development but also provides employment opportunities to such youth in the LWE affected areas. Now it says that a scheme of skill development envisages construction establishment of 1 industrial training institutes, each in 47 districts, and 2 skill development centers, each in those 34 districts. Now regarding creation of infrastructure in these LWE affected states and also to ensure faster and speedier development, the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change has allowed for diversion of forest area for infrastructural development. So it says that the ministry under the Forest Conservation Act has allowed for diversion of forest land up to 40 hectares, and this has been done with respect to creating infrastructure for 14 categories relating to schools, dispensaries and hospitals, electrical and telecommunication lines, drinking water projects, water and rain harvesting structures, minor irrigation canals, non-conventional sources of energy, skill upgradation and vocational training centers, along with connectivity through rural roads. So, the Ministry of Environment has allowed for diversion of up to 40 hectares of forest area for infrastructural development. So all these infrastructural development in the LWE affected areas will not only improve connectivity of the region, but it will also allow the government to ensure that the welfare schemes reaches to the common people. And overall, all these infrastructural development will further create employment in the LWE affected districts. So these can be said to be some of the important measures taken by the central government with respect to improving infrastructure and also skill development in the region. So these are some of the steps taken by the central government with respect to security measures and also developmental initiatives. Now this article also highlights about certain grievances which has been raised by certain states such as Jharkhand and Orissa. So the Chief Minister of Jharkhand has accused the central government of reducing the number of LWE affected districts. So the question is that how this will impact the state. It will impact the state financially as center can reduce the fund allocated under special central assistance scheme and also under security related expenditure scheme, because according to the central government there are less states in the state of Jharkhand which is now affected by left wing extremism. And based on this understanding, the Chief Minister of Jharkhand has also asked the Home Ministry to write off a bill of rupees 10,000 crores for deployment of central forces in Jharkhand, and has also asked the central government to take a decision not to send such bills to state governments in near future. Now, as per the norms, state governments have to reimburse the amount incurred on deployment of central armed police forces in a state. However, the Chief Minister of Jharkhand has asked the central government to bear this amount. Further, the Chief Minister of Odisha has asked the central government to conduct a survey across LWE affected districts to find out as to how many children of these LWE affected districts have cleared national level examinations such as NEET, IIJE, etc. The Chief Minister of Odisha said that if our systems continue to bypass these areas, it is not going to help the cause of people of LWE affected areas. And in this regard, it's important for the central government to find out as to how many children who are living in LWE affected areas have cleared the national level examination so that they can move ahead in their life both socially and also economically. So these can be said to be some of the grievances which have been raised by some of the states such as Jharkhand and Odisha. Thus, this news with respect to left-wing extremism becomes very important from our examination perspective. And in this regard, we have discussed about developmental activities or initiatives taken by the government, steps taken by the government to promote governance, and also the steps taken by the government to counter security challenges in LWE affected districts. And as stated, this topic becomes part of GS Paper 3 and questions can be expected in your mains examination. With this understanding, let's take up our next article. The next news to be taken up appears on page number 9. It says, Government and Industry Panel drives policy to revive manufacturing. Pandemic spurred effort to end import dependence and ensure value addition. So in discussion with the central government, a group of CEOs have comprised a steering committee in order to strengthen manufacturing and also to move away from import dependence. So the news highlights that a steering committee for local value addition, manufacturing and exports or scale aimed at navigating Indian manufacturing away from import dependence pitfalls exposed by the pandemic. So in this news discussion, let's understand the problems faced by the manufacturing sector and also certain suggestions as to how to improve or strengthen the manufacturing sector in India. So the problem areas with respect to manufacturing sector is the fact that it contributes a very small and stagnant share to GDP. That is, mere 17% is contributed through manufacturing. So most importantly, this share of GDP through manufacturing must increase. It further says that the composition of manufacturing is more skewed towards skill and capital intensive activities. So majority of the manufacturing sector of India is capital intensive. And some of the capital intensive manufacturing industries of India includes in the automobile sector, oil production and refining, steel production, telecommunication, transportation sector, etc. Another problem highlighted is that only a small share of employment in the manufacturing sector is in the organized manufacturing sector, whereas the unorganized manufacturing sector accounts for 70% of employment from manufacturing. So with respect to manufacturing, only 30% of employment is from the organized sector, whereas 70% of employment in the manufacturing sector is from the unorganized sector. And accordingly, employment in the manufacturing sector is heavily concentrated in small firms. So these can be said to be some of the problem areas for manufacturing sector in India. Now with respect to manufacturing, the government of India has taken a number of steps to boost manufacturing in India. The most important scheme is Make in India Action Plan. So according to this scheme, it intends to increase manufacturing sector's contribution to 25% of GDP by the year 2020. Further, the government also came up with National Manufacturing Policy of 2011 in order to create 100 million additional jobs by the year 2022. Further, in the sector of infrastructure, the government came up with National Investment and Manufacturing Zones, Special Economic Zones. The government set up industrial corridors, dedicated freight corridors, Sagarmala project, Bharatmala project, etc., in order to boost manufacturing and also to develop infrastructure in India. Further, regarding policy initiatives, government has recently changed the definition of MSME, and in the definition of MSME, it has also included the aspect of turnover. Now, the government of India consolidated labor laws into 4 labor codes. It also reduced corporate taxes, increased FDI limits in various sectors such as defense, public procurement policy, etc. And all these initiatives were intended to boost manufacturing in India. Further, the government of India gave number of financial incentives under the Atmanirbhar Bharat Abhiyan, and in this regard, even vocal for local and protection to domestic industries through tariffs were also envisaged. Further, various schemes such as Startup India, Stand Up India, Mudra Scheme, Scheme for Development of MSMEs, National Manufacturing Competitiveness Program, Zero Defect, Zero Effect, etc. were also rolled out by the government to boost manufacturing. Now, despite these initiatives by the government of India, manufacturing sector has not been able to contribute the way it was planned as per the Make in India action plan with respect to contribution of 25% up to year 2020. Now, in order to understand the problems with respect to manufacturing sector in India, it's very important to analyze the Make in India campaign, especially with respect to 3 economic parameters. These 3 economic parameters are investment rates, output growth, and third, employment growth. Now, regarding investment rates, we have witnessed a decline in investment in manufacturing sector. And as you can see, in the year 2013-14, the investment rate in the manufacturing sector was 13.3%, which then declined to 28.6% in 2017-18. Now, regarding growth output, Index of Industrial Production is a good example which reflects growth output of manufacturing. And the Index of Industrial Production has registered double-digit growth only 2 times from the year 2012 to 2019. So this also tells the story of problems in the manufacturing sector. And lastly, with respect to employment growth, we know that unemployment in India has been at an all-time high of 6.1% as per the Periodic Labour Force Survey. So on all these 3 economic parameters, Make in India campaign cannot be said to be a successful campaign. So it's important to understand the reasons for the failure of Make in India project. And the first reason highlighted is regarding poor conditions of the financial sector. Now, because of increasing NPAs for Indian banks, there has been a liquidity crunch, and because of this, banks and financial institutions have not been able to provide as much loan as possible to the manufacturing sector. And this overall has also reduced credit creation within the Indian economy. So increasing NPAs of Indian banks and financial institutions can also be said to be one of the reasons for failure of Make in India project. Now, it is only recently that the government of India has come up with 4 labor codes, and earlier the manufacturing sector, including the industries, has to comply as per the old laws. So it says that the archaic and outdated labor laws have led to higher compliance burden on the firms, and this overall has disincentivized the private sector from investing in the manufacturing sector. So high cost of compliance burden has deterred the private sector to enter into the manufacturing field. Now, another problem with respect to the manufacturing sector is the absence of mid-sized companies, as there are small companies and very large companies or conglomerates, and there is near absence of any mid-sized companies. And this overall has also been attributed to government incentive structure and policies. In this peculiar scenario, where there is near absence of mid-sized companies, has been referred as the problem of missing middle, and this can also be said to be one of the reasons for failure for Make in India project. Next, there is also a need for skilled human resources, and lack of available skilled human resources in the manufacturing sector can also be considered to be a constraint in the manufacturing sector. Now, according to the census of 2011, India has almost 53% of the population in the working age group, but still there is lack of available skilled human resources, and this also impacts the manufacturing sector. Other reasons include logistic cost and also impact of free trade agreement. So regarding the logistic cost, it accounts for 12 to 14% of India's GDP as compared to mere 8 to 9% in other countries. Now, this also overall increased the cost in the manufacturing sector. and this also deterred the private sector to enter into the manufacturing field. Further, the impact of FTAs allows import of cheaper foreign goods, and this overall also adversely impacts our domestic manufacturing. Now, other reasons include high taxation, as it is only very recently that the government of India has decided to reduce the corporate tax rates and bring them down at par with tax rates prevailing in other countries. But earlier, the corporate tax rates in India was considered to be at least 50% higher as compared to other emerging economies. And this perception also deterred many manufacturing industries from entering into India. Now, other challenge mostly for MSMEs in manufacturing sector is the adoption of new technologies such as artificial intelligence, data analytics, machine-to-machine communications, robotics and related technologies, which are collectively referred as Industry 4. And these technology adoption can be said to be a bigger challenge for small industries in the manufacturing sector. Now, other important reasons that could be attributed to the failure of Make in India program can be very cumbersome and complex land acquisition procedure in India, poor ease of doing business in India, greater amount of policy uncertainty in India, and also poor infrastructure. So all these cumulatively can be said to be the reasons for the failure of Make in India project. So the question arises as to what needs to be done. So in this regard, these are the steps which needs to be taken in order to improve manufacturing in India. The first point highlighted is regarding focusing on coastal economic zones, especially through port-led industrialization. Now, setting up coastal SEZs in China, such as Shenzhen, has enabled it to attract manufacturing companies from Taiwan and even Hong Kong. So, based on this model, India needs to replicate the same to attract companies from China now. The next point highlighted is to focus on sunrise sectors based on new technologies. So, based on new age technologies such as blockchain technology, robotics, machine-to-machine learning, big data, artificial intelligence, etc. So these technologies must be used to create new opportunities, especially in the manufacturing sector. The third point highlighted is with respect to boosting innovation through startups. And this could be done by providing access to finance, by providing certain tax incentives, and also providing direct access to the market for these innovation startups. The next point highlighted is to improve the quality of Indian manufacturing in order to boost its export. Further, there is a need to renegotiate the free trade agreements so that the cheap goods do not adversely affect Indian domestic manufacturing companies. Further, the product-linked incentive scheme must be extended to other sectors. Next, there is a need to facilitate the investment environment in India, and this could be done by improving the conditions or positions of NBFCs and banks, and also by strengthening the corporate bond market in India. The next important point highlighted is attracting foreign investment through plug and play model. Now, under this model, the investors are provided with land at affordable cost with all necessary pre-clearances, including environment clearance. Further, as per this model, it also provides an inbuilt office spaces and all the basic facilities such as electricity, water, etc. So one of the biggest advantage of plug and play model is that it allows the industry to kickstart as soon as possible without facing any major hurdles. Now, some of the states such as Maharashtra and Haryana have decided to adopt this model to boost foreign investment. So this model needs to be replicated by other states as well in order to boost the manufacturing sector in India. And lastly, there's a need for greater connection or connect between government, industry and academics in order to identify the changing requirements in the manufacturing sector and also prepare an employable workforce in India. So in the context of employability of engineers, there is a need for thorough review of standards of engineering education and its linkages with industry. So there is a need to create linkage between education and industrial standards. Thus, these steps, if taken overall, will help in improving the manufacturing sector in India. Now, this article becomes important from the perspective of GS Paper 3 under Indian economy. With this, let's take up our last two news for the day. The next news to be taken up appears on page number 3. It says Delhi Metro earned Rs 19.5 crores from the sale of carbon credits. Now, from the period of 2012 to 2018, Delhi Metro collected over 3 million carbon credits. So in this regard, we need to know about these carbon credits. As you can see, a question on carbon credits and clean developmental mechanism has been asked by UPSC. So in 2007, Delhi Metro became the first metro railway project in the world to be registered by United Nations under the Clean Development Mechanism. Now this enabled Delhi Metro project to claim carbon credits for its regenerative braking project. And in this regard, question was asked by UPSC in the prelims of 2016 with respect to clean developmental mechanism. Further, the question also asked about Annex 1 countries, certified emissions reductions and clean developmental mechanisms. So here let us first of all understand about clean development mechanism. Now this mechanism is defined in Article 12 of Kyoto Protocol, and this is exactly what was asked by UPSC. So obviously this statement becomes correct. This mechanism allows a country with an emission reduction or emission limitation commitment under Kyoto Protocol to implement an emission reduction project in developing countries. Now, a clean development mechanism project might involve rural electrification project using solar panels, or projects with respect to installation of more energy efficiency boilers. So these projects helps to stimulate sustainable development goals. Further, these mechanisms also give the industrialized countries some flexibility in how they meet their emission reduction or limitation targets. Now, another important aspect of this clean development mechanism is that these projects generate emissions credits called certified emission reductions. Now, these certified emission reductions are then bought and traded in the market. So, these certified emission reductions or CERs are electronic certificates issued for greenhouse gas emission reductions from clean development mechanism. Thus, certified emission reductions are not released under Nagoya Protocol. Now, the activities or programs with respect to clean development. Now, with respect to certified emission reduction, this is equivalent to 1 metric ton of carbon dioxide avoided or removed from the atmosphere. Further, these certified emission reductions are earned by greenhouse gas mitigation projects in developing countries after a rigorous verification process managed by the UN Climate Change Secretariat. And as we have seen that these clean development mechanism projects generate emissions called certified emission reductions, which are then bought and traded in the market. Further, the CDM also helps to deliver sustainable development benefits to the host countries. Now coming back to this question regarding Annex 1 countries, this has been provided under UNFCCC and not under Cartagena Protocol. So accordingly, the question was, which of the following pairs given above are correctly matched? So here the correct answer becomes C, that is 3 only. Now this topic becomes very important from the perspective of environment, and question can also be asked under the section of GS paper 3 pertaining to environment, ecology and biodiversity, and also with respect to carbon credits. So with this understanding, let's take up our last news for discussion. Now this news appears on page number 8. It says Beijing-Lhasa key road link completed, and this is part of China's infrastructure push in Tibet. So this news highlights that continuing its infrastructure build-up in Tibet, China has completed a key section of Beijing-Lhasa expressway, which is a 295-kilometer stretch from Lhasa to Nagku. Now as you can see in this map, this is where Nagku is and this is where Lhasa is, and Lhasa is very close to India. Now this section is located at an average altitude of 4,500 meters above sea level, and according to Chinese media, it has been termed as world's highest expressway. Now this news needs to be understood from the perspective of your map and also from the perspective of security, especially along border areas. So this part of this road project which has been completed is part of China's National Expressway 6, or also known as Beijing-Lhasa Expressway, and this is part of Chinese National Expressway network. Now the plan according to this network is to connect Beijing with that of Lhasa, and in this regard the Lhasa-Nagku section is part of G6 Beijing-Lhasa Expressway, and this is the first expressway linking Lhasa, which is the capital of Tibet Autonomous Region, to North Tibet. Now another significance for this development is that it also connects the Chinese Army's Central Theatre Command with Western Theatre Command, which is responsible for the border security with India. Now in June, China had also launched a high-speed bullet train connecting Lhasa with Ningchi, which is a strategically located Tibetan town close to Arunachal Pradesh. And as you can see in this map, this is where the location of Ningchi is, which is very close to Arunachal Pradesh. Thus, this news becomes important from the perspective of world map and also from the perspective of security. With this, let's take up our question for the day. Now, based on our discussion, this becomes your practice question for the day. So the question is, consider the following statements. First, clean development mechanism projects generate emission credits called certified emission reductions or CERs, which cannot be traded. Second, each CER is equivalent to 2 metric ton of carbon dioxide avoided or removed from the atmosphere. So the question is, which of the statements given above are correct? Options are A, 1 only, B, 2 only, C, both 1 and 2, and D, neither 1 nor 2. Now coming to the answer of yesterday, the question was, consider the following statements. Dark energy is visible to naked human eye, but dark matter is not. No, both are invisible. Second, dark matter and dark energy constitutes only 10% of the universe. No, dark matter constitutes 27% and dark energy constitutes 68% of the universe. So the question was, which of the statements given above are incorrect? So both statements are incorrect, hence the correct answer is C, that is both 1 and 2. So with this question for the day, we come to an end to today's discussion. Thank you for watching DNS.